Hey guys, and welcome to the wrap up. If you haven't been here before, this is the official Raptors Republic post-game live show where we recap, dissect, and have some fun talking about the latest Raptors game. I'm your co-host, Sahal Abdi. I'm here with Oren Weisfeld, the other co-host of this live show. Oren, tonight, fun game. Norman Powell returns 3 days after being traded to the Portland Trailblazers. But tonight, unfortunately, the Raptors were defeated by the Trailblazers 122-117, moving the Raptors to a very, very ugly, hideous 18-28 record. It didn't really hit me how bad their record was until late in the broadcast when Leo and Matt Devlin stacked it up versus the East. Because what I've been doing personally, Oren, I don't know about you, I've been staying far away from looking at the Eastern Conference standings, and today was like a reality check. So, unfortunately enough, for Toronto, like I said, they did drop tonight's game, and they have another one tomorrow night on a back-to-back versus Detroit. But in tonight's game, Warren, the overwhelming headline that took over Raptors Twitter, I want to say at least, was the fact that Norman Powell was returning to the Toronto, or I should say the Raptors' home in Tampa. What stuck out for you, I should say, in this game that the Raptors just narrowly lost by 5?
Sorry, I'm just tweeting it out. Just give me 1 second. Oh, you know what? No, that's not happening, unfortunately.
Right.
I'll do it next time you talk. But honestly, before we even get into the game, because I feel like it was very predictable, the same issues that have plagued the Raptors all season plagued them again. Like I was saying to my friends that if this game is close at the end, there's no hope for the Raptors because it's one of the best clutch teams in the league, and Damian Lillard, who's the best clutch player in the league, against the Raptors without Kyle Lowry. Very little hope there for obvious reasons. But I looked at the standings once in a while. I mean, the East is garbage. We have to put it into perspective. The Raptors are still only, I think, 2 games now out of the play-in tournament, which is Chicago right now. The East is absolute garbage, including teams with Charlotte and the Knicks above us who aren't scary at all. So I still think they absolutely have a chance of getting into the play-in game. And like we talked about last episode, they have a really easy upcoming schedule here. But the weird thing about this season, I think, is that every game feels winnable, but they all end the same way.
Yeah. In the most gut-wrenching, heart-tearing. It sucks. It sucks. And the fact that, Toronto time and time again, kind of at this point, Oren, I kind of just expected them to just blow everything up in the third quarter. It was a really competitive first half. Toronto looked good. I mean, Pascal Siakam looked borderline unguardable at times. It was unfortunate. It was very unfortunate. Robert Covington, who I think is one of the better defenders in the league, was getting smoked. I tweeted it. He was literally getting smoked by Pascal Siakam. And kudos to Siakam. This is a guy that at times in this game looked completely unguardable. He couldn't be stopped. And then OG was obviously taking advantage as well. With Covington on Siakam, OG was getting his. I think they were throwing Lillard on him at times. We even saw it late in the game when Lillard got this BS charge call on OG or whatever you want to call it, an offensive foul on OG.
That was a flop-a-roni.
Terrible call, but I guess from the referee's angle, he probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you could fall for that as referee, but that's another story altogether.
It's smart, though. When little players do that to big players, they call it all the time. So
100%, yeah. But, little players usually let them back down a few times. I feel like OG backed down once, and the second time Lillard went down, falling to a heap, and I thought it would be an immediate, defensive foul, but it wasn't. OG, a lot of bully ball early. I enjoyed how he played, but I guess overall, for me at least, in the second half, this was a tale of two halves for Toronto, and in the second half, Portland just seemed like they were just rebounding everything. There was a stretch, Oren, where Nick Nurse had Stanley Johnson out there on Enes Kanter, And every single time Enes Kanter, was down in the paint with Stanley, it was a guaranteed bucket. And then just like an effort, like that's another thing too. Like I'm looking at this play, Oren, and this is ridiculous. Like that's a ridiculous amount of effort.
Tons of these. Yeah.
I get it. Like Lillard, honestly, I expected that to go in from Lillard, but like you just can't expect no one to be there. Covington is a pest. He always has been a pest. Lillard just catches this in transition, lets it fire, and Covington only sees, Fred down there, Siakam on the other side. So he's like, why not? Fred tries selling a foul, Portland ball. So
yeah,
as much as I want to say, Oren, it was a lot of missed shots in the second half, and it was rebounding. A lot of it had to do with effort as well, unfortunately. What did you think about Toronto's effort in that second half?
Effort, I don't know if I call it effort. I think the effort has actually been there all season, so I don't blame it on effort. I more so blame it on like a lack of focus, which you could say are the same things, but they're kind of different. Like focus and communication on plays like that are the big thing. Like there was a lot of offensive rebounds where it was just Kanter or Nurkic bodying guys out, which is like understandable, even as much as it's frustrating to watch. But the long rebounds off threes are the most frustrating ones because those are very gettable if you're really paying attention and boxing out your guy. Like the one we just showed, those are the ones that kill you because it has nothing to do with the size on the floor. So, I mean, we've talked about rebounding every single game, so it's just getting old, to be frank. It's disappointing. Like, I thought the Raptors were going to get a buyout guy. I thought maybe they didn't make a move at the deadline because they had, I usually give them the benefit of the doubt and say, like, okay, maybe they have a relationship here with Gorgie Jang or something, and they'll get him. And all the buyout guys, all the main ones are now gone. Kelly Olynyk's the only potential one, but like we said, he doesn't really fix the problem. So help is really not coming unless it comes in the form of the G League. It doesn't look like help is coming. No. It looks like they're all in on Baines and small ball, and I can't see that winning a lot of games, especially like if Baines is still playing. He actually had a pretty good game, all things considered, but I don't know. The spacing is such an issue when him or Stanley are on the floor. It's like neither of them can shoot at all. And Baines takes the shots, which isn't even, I wish he didn't, honestly. But then it really makes things hard for Siakam and OG. And Siakam's been on fire recently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the promising thing is that, I mean, I want to be optimistic. And they've been force feeding OG and Siakam on ball reps, and they've been extremely efficient in these last few games. So like that was always the thing about the deadline was, you're losing Norm, but you're giving, this means OG is about to get a lot more reps.
Yeah.
And today was like the first game where they really force fed him, gave him some pick and roll reps, pick and pop as the big man. And I thought he was really good. I'll pull up a clip here.
Yeah. I loved how OG played today. He took advantage again of a team that, Portland's looking at this guy like, okay, if we're gonna play three guards in Powell, Fred, Powell's not on the Raptors, so come on. If they're gonna play three guards in Powell, Lillard, and McCollum, I mean, naturally, if those three are gonna play the most minutes, you're gonna see OG having a smaller guy on him, and they chose Lillard a lot of those times, and OG took advantage. And it wasn't just Lillard; it was Covington at times. If you see on this play, just lets it fire on Covington and hits it. And another thing, that ball came from Malachi Flynn, by the way. And this is another thing, Oren, for me, because I literally had to write it down. When you have Malachi Flynn in the game, I don't understand what this like from a strategical sense, why do we have Gary Trent and Rodney Hood, by the way, who had a very good game, but Gary Trent running all these isolation dribbles, trying to create when it's clear that if you have a lineup of Malachi Flynn, Gary Trent Jr., and Rodney Hood as your 1, 2, 3, then naturally Malachi Flynn is your best play initiator. So why is he not allowed to be that guy. Like, I feel like they baby Malachi Flynn a little bit too much, and a lot of times he's very hesitant. I love when I see a confident Malachi Flynn. It's unfortunate. I don't understand why they still do that with him. Please, guys, let Malachi Flynn be the play initiator. If you're gonna play him only 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes a game, let him do what he's best at, and initiate sets, and find that open. Let him run the pick and rolls. It doesn't always have the ball doesn't always have to end up in OG or Fred or whoever he's playing with hands. And Malachi is that guy who just stands around. I want Malachi, especially with the season looking like it is now, I want Malachi to be that guy, Oren, where we can showcase him a bit. We're 18-28. 18 wins, Oren, 28 losses on the season. We got the Detroit Pistons tomorrow. If you asked me 3 months ago, yes, I would definitely say we were blowing out the Detroit Pistons, on March 29th, 2021. But right now, Oren, it's not looking like a win. We haven't won the last 2 times versus Detroit. And tomorrow it's not looking all that great either. So, back to the game, it's unfortunate. It was unfortunate. That's just one of my gripes, my personal thing that I have going on, Oren, with Malachi Flynn.
No, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I'll pick the Raptors to win tomorrow because I don't know. They can't get swept by the Pistons this season. It's just it wouldn't. No, like they know that they have an upcoming schedule here that's really easy, and that they know that this is their opportunity coming up to make up ground in the race. They just played like 3 really good Western Conference teams, and they went 1-2. It really wasn't horrible. Like it's obviously frustrating because they're losing games in the same ways for the same reasons, but the fact that all these games are close is a good sign. I mean, every game is coming down to like a 15-minute last 2 minutes, and it's really annoying to watch, but it means that the Raptors have been fighting the whole time. And it means that they're getting closer and closer, even against really good teams. They're in it. So, I mean, they're like, I actually wrote this down, which is that the problem with the season is that we've never had everyone gelling at the same time. We haven't had all of the good players healthy and playing well at the same time. At the beginning of the season, it was Kyle playing really well, and Siakam was nowhere to be found. And then there was injuries, and then now it's like Kyle isn't really. He hasn't been that good recently, and Fred and OG and Pascal especially have been really good. Fred hasn't been hitting shots. So all they really need is their best players to find like a groove, because if that happens and they're healthy, I believe that this team can still get to that 6th seed, like as crazy as that sounds. I don't even think they need a center to make a run. It's just a matter of all of these guys being healthy and being there. And the other thing is, like, I was listening to a podcast. Oh yeah, they were talking about the Warriors, and the difference between this season's Warriors versus obviously like the amazing Warriors. Yeah. And they're saying like this season Warriors they haven't learned how to win yet. They've been in a lot of close games like the Raptors, and they've been a really bad team in the clutch like the Raptors. So that's the thing. These guys need to learn how to win together. We have no faith in them when it gets down to it, and the game is like at the end. But I think they just need 1 or 2 to kind of flip this season around, find something that works in the clutch. And, I'm still pretty optimistic in terms of at least getting into the play-in game, because I don't think they want to tank.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, Oren, for me, and this that's clear. Like that's clear for me. Like for anyone with an ounce of logic, it's clear that Toronto's not going to look to tank. And I know fans don't like being an 11th seed compared to a 14th or 15th seed. It's understandable. I get it. But step back into reality and realize that these are professional basketball players who value winning more than anything. Doesn't matter if they're 18-28 or 18-50 or 18-100. We have guys like Fred VanVleet, OG, the majority of this team, the crux of this team, the overwhelming majority of this team has won a championship, what are we, 2 years away from winning a championship? They've won a championship. They know what it's like to be at that pinnacle. They value winning more than anything. These guys were winners. Some of these guys were winners before they even came to Toronto, whether they're coming from a different NBA team or coming from college. So there's a bunch of winning mindset players on this team, but I just feel like the talent level at certain on the bench, to be honest, is just isn't there. And there's massive holes that just haven't been filled.
No, for sure. It's like we're cycling back between different. Nurse still has no idea who he wants to close games with. And the biggest difference between last season is like, yeah, he had a choice. It was nice, actually, I think, to have a choice between Ibaka or Gasol. Whoever was hot that night, he could put in there and trust to close games. But the other four were set, right? Like we were for sure closing the game with the other four. This season, it's like, especially because of injuries and COVID, it's such a mishmash. On any given night, we have no idea who's closing. Like tonight, at one point, it was like Johnson and Hood, and then Boucher came in. And yeah, like the bench is the biggest problem. Rodney Hood had 11 points in the first half, and it was super promising, and it looked super great. And then he only had 2 points in the second half. And once again, yeah, Stanley had 11 points here, but those were all very open threes that like the defense was just giving him, screwing up the spacing for him to take those shots. And he hit a couple, but he hasn't really been good on either end, good enough to justify like closing out games for this team.
Yeah.
And Trent wasn't very good tonight. Neither was Powell on the other end, to be fair. It was kind of like both of those guys.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. Rodney Hood, for me, at least in the first half, was one of the best players in the game. But we got to see flashes of finally of bench scoring in this game. And Rodney Hood is a guy that I have a lot of interest in terms of how the Raptors are going to use him for the rest of the season. He's a guy that's clear-cut one of the best, if not the best, bench player currently on the Raptors. I mean, yes, you could probably say Chris Boucher, but Chris Boucher has been really, really struggling lately. This was probably, for me, the tweet of the night. I don't know about you, but it really hurt because it was like bittersweet knowing that Rodney Hood, was one of the worst, I want to say, or player probably that struggled the most on Portland on their bench to start that year, gets traded here, and now we realize that Rodney Hood's probably one of the best bench players, if not the best bench player that the Raptors have to offer. Shout out Assad for this, at Swar Lasers, good friend of mine, for this tweet. But it's unfortunate. It really is that Rodney Hood has kind of, like I said, bittersweet. Of course, it's great he's emerged for Toronto, but in the grand scheme of things, for him to just come in and immediately, look like one of the best bench players, that proves that Toronto is in a very, very bad spot when it comes to the bench this year. Do you agree with me, Oren?
Yeah, I don't think he's the best, but I think he's probably top three. Like I'll put Boucher and then maybe, you know what? I could probably only definitively put Boucher, maybe Bembry, ahead of him. But like, yeah, everyone when the trade happened was talking about him as just salary filler. But even Masai like made it clear, like often in those press conferences, you don't hear a GM talk about salary filler. Like it just is what it is. But he was very clear that like they got two good players for one. That was the way he was looking at it. And when your bench is so bad, that sticks out. And Rodney Hood did not have a great second half.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for him is he's going to have to hit spot up threes to stay in the group, because defensively he's good length. He's in the right spots at the right time. Offensively, he has some self-creation at the end of shot clocks. He's going to get you a bucket, but if he's hurting the spacing, it's just going to be, that's the only way I see him not getting minutes, is if he's not hitting those spot up threes, which has been a struggle a little bit. I want to talk a bit about OG here. I'm going to pull up a clip. This is one of his nicer buckets of the season. I mean, it was a little lucky, and that was one of the things I wanted to hit on, but like he gets Nurkic here. Yeah, so he gets Nurkic there. One thing Raptors fans have been screaming about all season is like, let's get Siakam and OG some pick and roll reps.
Mm-hmm.
So here we get the pick. So they have to switch it, or they choose to. And even if they didn't switch it, when he had CJ on him or Dame on him this game, he was just posting them up and they had no chance. So, I mean, on a quick aside here, a big thing that OG is going to have to learn is how to play with his back to the basket like Siakam, because if he posts up guys like that, they're going to start double teaming him and he has to be able to make better decisions and pass a little better. But yeah, here they switch it. He gets Nurkic a big on him and no hesitation. That's what I like. He doesn't give Nurkic time to size him up. He just goes. And it could have been an and one. He just.
And you could honestly say, Nurkic played that pretty well. Like, if you play it again, like, Nurkic kind of dared OG to kind of shoot it, but at the same time, he was with him the whole time. And I think OG probably assumed Nurkic was going to be a little slower on his lateral ability than he was there, but he stuck with him. And Nurkic is a guy, Oren, that, my goodness, like, I tweeted, like, it's really not fair, the fact that Portland can have two very good centers in Enes Kanter and Yusuf Nurkic, and Toronto can have none. Like, that's just
and they got Kanter for nothing in free agency. I'm pretty sure his contract is really reasonable.
Like I think it's like $5 or so million a year.
Yeah.
But Nurkic is like, you start realizing that, of course, without Nurkic, this is still a very good team. But with Nurkic, this team can access a whole different level. Nurkic, he shot a 3 today and he made it. I was completely shocked. I did not even know he could do that. He's a very good passer. We saw him with a very nice bounce pass to CJ McCollum on a back cut on OG Anunoby in this game. Nurkic is a player who I might be super, super high on him, a little too high, but I genuinely think when he's healthy, he's one of the best centers in the league.
Oh, for sure he is. I mean, the more I think about the Dorm trade, the more I like it, because, Derek Jones Jr., they were relying him on a lot to close games, and now they can kind of choose between him or Norm, but beside the other four. And I mean, they're going to be a hard out. They always are. Dame is probably having the best season of his career.
Yeah.
And today it wasn't really even Dame at the end of the game. It was more CJ. But when you get into the end of the game against the Blazers, it's like, I've been watching them a ton this season. Dame's probably my favorite player in the league. It's over. Like, Dame is a perfect decision maker in the last 5 minutes. He does not make mistakes. He finds the open man, or he just takes those threes that he's so good at hitting himself.
As crazy as it sounds, Oren, so is CJ. And it's unbelievable that Portland, rosters two of maybe the top 10 clutch guards in the league, or clutch players, and CJ and Dame. It's ridiculous that they have those two guys. I love Portland's sounds like I'm just gushing so much about Portland, but I love their roster balance now. They have so many different things they can do with, Covington and Derek Jones Jr., now Powell, and, obviously Dame and CJ and Nurkic, but they have a good amount of depth, man. They have a really, really good amount of depth. Anthony Simons looks pretty good. He had a really nice, step back 10-footer, something I wish Fred would start doing, instead of just either, taking it to the rim and getting blocked, or I'm not going to go there with Fred, but it was another unfortunate game for Toronto. Again, tale of two halves.
Yeah, I mean, the third quarter, I think we should hit on it before we stop talking about the game.
Yeah,
was when the Raptors went 0 of 13 from 3, I think, to start off the third quarter. And our friend Samson made this point on Twitter, and it's a good one, is that when Kyle's not there and now Norm's not there, the Raptors often can get into this habit of just shooting threes, because as good of a playmaker Fred is, he really only sets up 3-pointers. He's not a great pick and roll player. He doesn't have those bounce passes into the pocket of a roller very often. It's more so, he'll get in the paint and then throw it out for a nice semi or open 3. But when the three's not falling, let me get rid of the spanner here, or this comment 1 second. Yeah, when the three's not falling, the Raptors really fall into this trap of just shooting threes and they have nothing else. And that's going to be a lot of more pressure on OG and Siakam. for the second half of the season because they're really the only guys who can get to the rim. We did not get a big on the buyout. We don't have anyone coming. So it's really just going to be on those two to put enough pressure on the rim to where this team can at least like have defenses collapse so that they can have these open threes rather than just passing it around the perimeter and
for sure,
and not creating any real good looks.
Yeah, man, it's like I said, Oren, it's so tough watching these games where Toronto plays with effort and then they just collapse, and there's one single run in the entire game that kind of defines everything for Toronto. They just went on a dry shooting spell, and that was really the turning point. That was the turning point of the game, and it sucked because I really wanted this game because Portland is, obviously the trade that just went down. Now Norman Powell's 2-0 as a Portland Trailblazer. They beat the Orlando Magic, and now they beat his former teammates in the Toronto Raptors. But on the Raptors side, it's unfortunate. They've lost, I believe, 8 of their last 10, if I'm not mistaken.
It's getting bad.
Yeah, it's getting to the point now in Toronto where it hurts.
Yeah, what do you think about Charles's comment? Do you think this is like just low key from the management, like kind of a low key tank where they haven't got the big. They're putting the ball in OG's hands and Pascal's hands and making life kind of difficult for them. So do you think this is kind of an intentional, like, we're just going to develop and get a good pick in the draft this year and not focus too much on winning? Or do you think that the front office is like kind of shocked here?
No, I genuinely think that the front office all the way down to the equipment manager wants to come into every single game for Toronto and win. I don't believe this mini conspiracy theory going around, Raptorland where, the front office or Nick Nurse or whoever is doing things to tank, or that they should. Like, they're not. They're 100% not. Can I see, later in the season when they're mathematically out of everything, can I see Nick Nurse maybe leaning on Malachi Flynn for, instead of 8 to 10 minutes a game, maybe 20 minutes a game, 21, 22 minutes a game? Sure, absolutely. But right now, they're really trying to win every game. And again, Portland's one of the better teams in the West. We can't act like, Portland came in here and blew Toronto out completely, or that Toronto came and, like, shat the bed completely. That's just not the case. They were really competitive to the end. I really like the effort that they showed at the end of that game. So for me, it's just not the case. Like, it's unbelievable to me that other people can look at this team and say, well, just lose.
Yeah.
These are professionals, guys. Like, these are professional basketball players who have been winning their entire lives. They're not just going to come together, eating lunch one day right after practice and say, you know what, guys, because I think, Evan Mobley or Cade Cunningham or whoever it is you like, Moses Moody, is looking pretty good in the draft. I think we should, maybe not try as hard this game. No, that's not happening. Nick Nurse isn't looking at his coaches and saying, you know what, we should play Fred 30 minutes, instead of 40, just because I feel like, we're gonna lose this one. No, that's not happening, guys. Tanking is it's not happening. The Raptors won't let it happen. And this is something I've addressed on Twitter multiple times because it's the main thing you hear. Raptors fans aren't really used to losing, Lauren, are they? I mean, the last decade or so, Raptors have been a very, very, very good basketball team. Even before they won the chip, they were a consistent playoff team. And now we're finally seeing a Raptors team that I don't want to say necessarily is hitting rock bottom, but, things are looking bleak for Toronto right now.
No, for sure. Things are looking bleak, but, like, I think it's a little bit of both in terms of, like, they expect to win, and even I expect them to win, which is the weird thing. Like, I think every time they play a team, even if it's a good team, I'm like, they have a good chance tonight. Like, there's a lot of talent on this Raptors team, and when they're playing well, you believe in them. Like, they have a great coach. They have a lot of talent. They've proven that they can beat any good team. But at the same time, you do have to wonder because, like, there is no center. The bench is all young guys who are development projects. You do have to wonder a little bit, like, how high exactly was the front office's expectations this season? Did they truly, truly believe that this team was, going to be like a contender, or did they low key just think like, okay, well, we'll let these young guys get some reps and it will kind of take a year to, after Giannis resigned, it was really hard to see this team being great. So I think they're doing the right thing by giving these guys developmental reps, putting the ball in OG's hands, playing Flynn, all that type of stuff. But as fans, it's definitely frustrating to watch. But okay, last thing here. Oh,
sorry, you can go ahead. I was about to show Gary Trent's first 3 as a Raptor. We can get to that a bit later.
Oh yeah, no, I already played this one a couple times. I really like this play though because he waited so long. CJ waited so long to double team Siakam here, and by the time he did, Siakam was like, "I'm just gonna go to my move anyway. I'm too close to the basket anyway." Siakam kind of put Covington in the gym today. And Covington's a pretty big guy, and I looked at his box score. Siakam in these last 3 games, which I think you could argue have been the best 3 games of maybe the last 2 seasons of his. 9 free throws, 11 free throws, and 10 free throws. So this was something I wrote about at the beginning of the season, and it's like for him, he needs to get to the free throw line more. He's a good shooter there. He has all the attributes to get there more often, and like 10 a game is obviously like, I'm not asking for Jimmy Butler, James Harden type numbers, but if he can bump it up like to 7, 8, like that's going to help him immensely as a number 1 option type of guy. So I've been really happy with what I've seen from Siakam because he has to be exhausted. Like this guy had COVID. He run on defense. He's guarding Nurkic. He's running all over. And then on offense, he's doing everything too. So yeah, this is taking a toll on these guys. So the fact that they're still playing so hard, him, OG, Fred, you got to respect it.
Oh, I definitely respect it. The free throw thing is that something that, you and I have both brought up multiple times on the show. Siakam needs to get to the line to have a successful game. He just needs to. And today was a very good game for Siakam. Played Robert Covington very, very well. Robert Covington is, overall as a defender, whether it be an isolation defender or a help defender, he's a very, very good and a very smart defender that plays with a lot of effort. You saw it on the last clip that we showed about 10 or so minutes ago on the Fred VanVleet, offensive rebound. He's a player that plays with a lot of effort. In the comments, though, Ornan, a lot of people are talking about Gary Trent Jr. And naturally, with Rodney Hood having a very good first half, this clip is obviously a better clip of Gary Trent Jr. It was his first 3 as a Toronto Raptor. Nice little action for him on the elbow. Gary Trent Jr., again, well known in the NBA as a very good spot-up shooter. But with Gary Trent, today at least, Oren, we saw a guy who was struggling for his shot to go down. Gary Trent in some ways, Oren, reminds me a lot of a young Norman Powell. Not necessarily as an archetype or as playing style, but just in terms of their streakiness. Gary Trent Jr. is a very streaky player. Remember, guys, he's only 22 years old. So you're going to get these type of games where he's just ice cold all game long, just like we got from Norman Powell. I mean, we'd see a 30-point game from young Norman Powell or a 20-point game, and then you'd see a 8-point game, and then you'd see a 6-point game, and then 15-point, So with Gary Trent Jr., I think it's only fair that we kind of realize that this is a very young player, a very streaky player, a guy who's not yet in his prime, and a guy who relies on shooting more than anything. And if you naturally rely on shooting, it doesn't matter who you are, unless you're Steph Curry, really, or Clay, or Damian Lillard, or I should probably just keep going. Unless you're one of the real, true, elite, shooters in the league in terms of everything you can do, you're going to have these type of games, especially when you're a 22-year-old. Gary Trent Jr. is a very young guy. Do the Raptors expect more from him? Sure, absolutely. But again, it's been 2 games. He doesn't really know the sets yet. He doesn't understand the offense. And again, this is a season, Oren, where if you're getting traded to a new team, it's hard to adjust. It's much harder to adjust. You have a game every other night. And if you don't have a game every other night, you have a back-to-back. So guys aren't really learning, offenses. They don't have 2 or 3 days in between games anymore.
They're not practicing either.
They're not practicing. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for Nick Nurse to get together a practice and say, you know what, we're gonna relearn all the sets because we have Gary Trent Jr. and Norm and Rodney Hood here. It's not happening. So I'm giving Gary Trent Jr. some time, a little bit of time to kind of find himself in this offense, find out where he fits. And one of the coolest parts, Oren, by the way, in this game was me just watching Gary Trent Jr. and seeing if he actually could telegraph some of the Portland sets. And a lot of times he could. It was very weird. I was just watching him guard Damian Lillard or CJ at times. And he almost knew exactly what type of back screens and all these off-ball, actions that they were doing. It was pretty cool to watch, to be honest, to see how he would react to that. So that was one thing, small thing I was interested in seeing in Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah. It's pretty rare for teams to play that short after a trade like that goes down.
Yeah.
So it was definitely interesting. I got a fun play for us here, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you took us out completely. There we go.
This was probably the play of the game here. Your favorite player,
Oh no!
Gets the pass. At this point, I said no, and then at this point, I said, "Oh no!"
Yeah, I remember this.
And then he did it on Norm too. So that was pretty surprising. I mean, Baines actually had a pretty good game, but even a good game for him is not good for NBA players. Yeah, the offense, the Raptors' offense has really been stalling out recently. If you go back and watch the Raptors last season, I went back and watched a Celtics game from the playoffs, and the offense was so bad. They weren't doing anything other than screening and then, pick and roll, pick and pops, no off-ball movement, no post-ups, and really nothing. And this season started off so well. It was so enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you don't expect an assistant coach and Chris Finch to walk away and everything to change, because you would think the sets and everything, the system is already in place. But I really have noticed since Chris Finch left, the offense is stalling out. There's very little off-ball movement. There's very little flare screens happening. There's just not enough, unpredictability to it. It results in the same guys taking kind of the same shots, and not really an enjoyable thing to watch. And also their transition offense has been terrible recently, and this is a team that kind of thrives off that. But I think it's just because they're so tired without a center. It's they're so tired after a defensive possession. It's impossible to run after 24 seconds of fighting around screens and everything, and rebounding over bigger guys. So yeah, this roster is so flawed, and it's kind of an interesting lesson in roster building in that what do you think about the analytics crowd? They always talk about center being the most replaceable position in the NBA, and I've never agreed with that, because bad centers are replaceable. Average centers, I guess you could say, are replaceable, but centers that can play in a playoff game, play in a game 7, I think that they're the opposite of replaceable. I think they're the hardest guys to find in the league, to be honest. And this Raptors team has proved that if you don't have a good, legitimate starting center, everything gets messed up. Even if you have a front court that is really well adept at OG is one of the best, 3 guards who can defend centers. Even if you have that, if you don't have a real center to start games, you're screwed.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, man. I personally don't agree with it, because what I've seen from Toronto, it's if we're talking roster holes, this might be the biggest roster hole in the entire NBA. The player you're seeing here in the third quarter, coincidentally enough for Toronto, after Norm Powell got the steal and took the lead, Toronto never saw the lead again. So this was the turning point, or the wrap-up turning point of the game, I should say, unfortunately enough for Toronto. And it just had to come from, our guy, number 24, Norman Powell. So
yeah, and you see him stare down the bench.
Yeah, I saw that. You know what's funny? I thought he would be laughing at the bench, and then I realized once he turned and I saw him not laughing, I'm like, there's no reason he should be laughing. These guys traded him away. Obviously, it's not the bench or Nick Nurse that traded him away, but just organizationally, obviously. So, yeah, he had a point to prove. He didn't have a great game himself, Norman Powell. But, I mean, to win a game, he probably doesn't really care. Norm's the type of guy that I think he would rather score 11 and lose and win than score 30 and lose. So it's an unfortunate game for Toronto. They do have Detroit tomorrow, Oren.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting them to win. You can call me a pessimist, guys. I'm not really expecting much from Toronto tomorrow, at least.
Detroit traded. They traded our guy, DeLon, right? Yeah. So Detroit, they got worse.
They did get worse, but they're trying to get worse.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about a team that actually wants to tank, guys. Yeah. To everybody in the live comments, it's the Detroit Pistons trading DeLon Wright for Corey Joseph and 2 second-round picks. But hey, Raptor for Raptor trade, and I liked it. So now Lowry and the guys can see their guy Corey Joseph.
Did you see the end of the Sacramento game last night?
Was it, if I'm not mistaken, Harrison Barnes?
Crazy ending. Insane. It was so weird though, because after that I saw them like jump on him and I was like, hey, DeLon's there. Hey, Terrence Davis is there. I was like, I totally forgot about those trades. That was a ridiculous game.
You know what's funny though? The Kings have been, for me, one of the funnest teams to watch this year. So shout out to the Sacramento.
I have De'Aaron Fox in fantasy, so I'm loving it. Yeah. Sorry, we're kind of down. It's just it's hard to watch these games. It's the same thing happening night after night. But this stretch coming up here, if you want to like hear about it, go to the last episode. We outlined who's coming up. A really bad stretch of teams with a lot of injuries to their star players. So either the Raptors make a run here and we start talking about the play-in game, or they keep losing and we start talking about developmental stuff. Either way, we'll see soon.
It would have been nice, when Toronto was on that 9-game losing streak, for them to like win 1, lose a couple, win 1, lose 3, win 1, so we can get a sprinkle of some winning in there. Fortunate, that's not how it went for us.
We got Denver. That Denver game was very enjoyable.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us, guys. Before you leave us tonight, we need you to like, comment, subscribe to the Raptors Republic channel. Turn on the post notifications if you haven't already. We also want to thank our sponsor, Arv Qureshi, from Remax, for supporting the show. This was the wrap-up. This is your Raptors Republic live post-game show. Your Toronto Raptors were defeated by the Portland Trailblazers 122-117. I'm your co-host, Sahal Abdi. Again, here with Oren Weisfeld. We'll see you guys tomorrow versus the Detroit Pistons.
See ya.